Hello, welcome back to Rev Endurance Sports and another edition of Bike Profiles. I did one on the Tommasini Tecno. It seemed to get good reception and interest. So I thought I would do the Ritchey. Now the Ritchey is a steel bike. Ritchey makes titanium bikes. They also make carbon bikes, and they also make breakaway bikes, which is one of the coolest things you will ever get from them. And that is a bike that will break away, will break apart, and it'll fit in the size of a suitcase that is literally just the size of your wheel, the external dimensions of your wheel. And you just take it to the airport, and they don't charge you additional baggage fees. Now, of course, there's been a lot of change to how the airlines had some prejudice against us with bike boxes and bike carrying and the amount that they used to charge. But anyway, this is something, it's just an additional bag, it's $25 or something like that. So it's really inexpensive. Anyway, that's the breakaway, but I don't have a breakaway. I have a standard Ritchey Road Logic, and I'm going to go through it bow to stern, as they say. Okay, so this is a 2014, and you know, let's be frank, they don't really have model years, so they don't go through every year, change the colors and stuff like that. You'll have the same frame, the same color for multiple years, and I guess you just say when you bought it. So I bought this in 2014, and it's now 2022. So I've had this bike 8 years. I've got about 11,000 miles on it, and I have mentioned before, I own and ride routinely 8 different bikes. It's just whatever whatever mood I'm in for whatever type of ride I'm going to do. But you know, if this bike has 11,000 miles, you kind of get the idea that I ride this one quite a bit. So that's the quick overview of the bike. Let's get down into some of the details. So right here, this is a SQ Lab handlebar that I've done a review on. And initially, I wasn't 100% sold on it, but I am liking it more and more and more now that I've been riding it. This is a K-Edge computer mount for my Wahoo that I mount on there, and then if I wanted to, I could mount a GoPro or something underneath. And I just put some new white bar tape on here, just, well, why not? It matches the logos. I know that there's a rule, you know, black bar tape, and if you look at some of my other pictures and videos, you'll see I had black bar tape on there. But from time to time, I like to put some white bar tape on here. Now this bike is a full Dura-Ace build. This is the 9000 group. There is a R9100 group set, which is the one that replaced this one, but this is the R9000 group. And what's interesting is that this frame, I mean, it only retails for about $1,200, $1,300. It isn't that expensive of a frame. It's TIG welded. It's made in Taiwan, so it's not even made in the US, but it has such a huge following. And what you'll find is a lot of people that get this frame, they do build it up really nicely. And so in my case, it's a full Dura-Ace build, except for the rear derailleur, which I'm going to get to in a minute. But you know, you get crankset. Oh, actually, I guess my front derailleur as well. I guess this is good for me too. Anyway, when I first built this bike, I built it as an Ultegra bike back in 2014. And, you know, Ultegra is a very, very good, reliable group. It's inexpensive. And if you're trying to maintain 8 different bikes, you know, they can't all have Dura-Ace on them, but, you know, most of them do. In this case, I built this bike with Ultegra, and then I built it with the low-profile head Ardennes wheels And I've also done videos on this channel about the head wheels and how much I love them. This is the RC4. So this is a 46 millimeter deep section wheel, and deep in finger quotes because it's not really all that deep. But what I want to call your attention to on this is that this has a textured brake surface, and hopefully that'll focus in right there. And so this is a very, very good braking technology on the rim, and then this is just a fairing. So it's not a structural carbon wheel. It is an aluminum wheel with a fairing. So you're wondering, why go through that? Oh, that's going to be heavier than a carbon wheel, blah, blah. Because carbon wheels suck, okay? I just need to be honest with you. Most people won't tell you that. Most people in bike shops won't tell you that. They want to sell you carbon wheels. They're more expensive, but their braking is terrible. It's worse when they get wet, and they're subpar in the dry. But carbon wheel braking, rim brake is terrible. So I ride aluminum wheels because the braking is phenomenal. I outbrake anyone else who's on disc brakes. I test ride bikes all the time as I do service on them, and the disc brakes just don't work that great. I don't know why everyone thinks they need to have disc brakes. They do not brake that well. Okay, anyway, that's a slight rant. So the one thing that you'll notice, or may not notice, is that this has a little bit of a slope to the top tube. And of all my steel bikes, this is the only one that has a slope. All my other steel bikes are traditional square frames, so the top tube is level, and that's just the way I like them. But you know, this gives it a little bit of a racier feel if you like that. So it's got a 120 stem and a 55.5 top tube. It's got a little bit of a taller head tube than I like. This is a size 55. I generally like to have like a 140 max 150 head tube. So this is a little bit taller, so then I've cut off all the spacers on it. And just to get good purchase on the headset, of course, I have a spacer on top. So they have their own carbon fork. And as I mentioned, this has Dura-Ace spec on it. So there's your Dura-Ace brakes, rim brakes. And one of the things I love about this bike is all the external cables. I love that. Love it, okay? Because this makes the bike easy to work on. You got external cable here for your rear derailleur. You can, when you're installing the cable, you can pull on it and get good tension on the cable, get a good stretch on it. The top brake cable is here. And you can put these little rubber donuts on here if you don't like the top tube, the cable to hit your top tube when you're going over rough surface. That doesn't bother me in the least. So if I remember, I put the little rubber donuts on there, or I don't. It's just not that important. By the way, I wear headphones all the time, so all the creaks and the noises that people complain about, I don't even hear them. They do not bother me. I just love riding my bike, put headphones on. I don't care about having a radar. I don't care about the cars behind me. They're not gonna get in the way. They're not gonna bother me. And especially on a descent, they can't keep up with me. Everything here is very twisty, and you know, cars don't bother you. So I don't care to have a radar system on my bike. Okay, so we have the Dura-Ace crankset 5339 and a Dura-Ace 1128 cassette. Now we have a lot of steep stuff here, 15, 20, 25% grades. And if I'm going to go out and do that kind of a ride, then I'll put on an 1132. And if I know, like all day long, it's just 20%ers, then maybe I'll put on an 1134. And that leads me to another really important point. With some bikes, and I've noticed mainly on carbon bikes, the position of the derailleur hanger. So this is a Ritchey steel bike, and because it's steel, it does not have a detachable rear derailleur hanger. Now this hanger, just because of the way it's positioned, I can run a short cage rear derailleur, and I can run a short cage rear derailleur No funny business here with any road links or anything, and I can run an 1134 on a short cage rear derailleur without any, like I said, any funny business. And it just depends on where that rear derailleur hanger is positioned, where the frame design puts it. So the 1128 is just a very, very good cassette for me. I like it. It's funny because I remember I was riding 1127 cassettes when everybody was riding 1123 and 1125 cassettes here in San Diego. And they all looked at me, all laughing at me because I had such a big cassette. And I would say to them, you know, when I'm 300 miles into my 500-mile race, a 6% grade, you know, feels like it's a 9% grade. So I like my 1127. And now the most common cassette sold is 1128 for the racer guys and 1132, 1134 for the recreational people. And, you know, in the 105 group set, the 105 Di2 group set, they're going to an 1134 as a standard issue in that group set, and then 1136 for a group for a cassette that's outside the group. It's a HG 710 or something like that. Anyway, let's get back to this bike. So rear derailleur is covered now. Oh, and the story I was going to tell you, during lockdown there was a customer who crashed his bike. We couldn't get him a rear derailleur, so I sold him my rear derailleur which was a Dura-Ace rear derailleur, and then I just put this old Tegra one on there. Also, the wheel set that used to be on here, which was the low profile head Ardennes, I had to sell those too because we couldn't get wheels. So I sold those wheels to one of my customers because he needed wheels. There's a Syntace seat post on here. No particular reason, no particular affinity to it. But what I like about it is the 2-bolt adjustment, so you can get the saddle in the right place. Now you notice I didn't say level. I don't know. I probably will make a video at some point about all the stupid comments and rant about those on my channel. Or I should say the comments that I get on my channel. There is some SQ Lab videos out there and they're all like, oh, I tuned on here to see how you level the saddle. Oh, you didn't level the saddle. Oh, you didn't show us how to level the saddle. And I want to say to them, please stop obsessing about the dumb stuff. You don't level a saddle. No, you don't. So don't obsess about it. Here's what you do with your saddle. You put it on, you ride it around the block, you ride it for 50 miles, whatever it is, and you make the adjustments so that you're comfortable. If that ends up being level, good for you. But that's not important. The saddle should not be level. It has to be comfortable. That's the most important thing. Okay, so this saddle, by the way, is level. But I didn't ever put a level on it. I just was curious one day, and it just ended up being level because that's where it was comfortable for me. And it is an SQ Lab saddle. So I talk a lot about SQ Lab saddles because, in my opinion, they are the most comfortable saddles I have ever ridden. And so this is an SQ Lab saddle, 612. It's a 14 centimeter. Let me make sure on the tag here. Yep, 14. I've tried 15, it didn't work, and 13 was originally what I was on, but I ended up on this 14. It was a lot more comfortable. So I do have a Ritchey seat post that I'm probably going to put on here because my tandem is cracked. My Pinarello tandem has a crack on the bottom bracket, so all the parts on there are pretty much useless now. It's aluminum and no one wants to weld it. It's a scandium tandem and no one wants to weld it. But, so like I said, no affinity to this particular seat post. I do like Ritchey product, and so why not do the stem and the seat post in Ritchey. But I think that's all. Oh, and you know what? I don't care if I look like a dork. I do carry a pump with me. And if it's a really, really long day, I will carry a frame pump, because when you're out in the boonies here in San Diego, I mean, you are in the desert in no time at all. You will not see a cyclist for a long time, if at all, the rest of the day, if you've decided to go out, you know, I don't know, 30, 40 miles outside of San Diego proper. You're in the desert. There's just nothing out there. And you can get, you know, a couple of goat heads in one shot, and then you're down. You don't have any tubes, you don't have any patches, you don't have anything else. In the past, I've done a video on these Cervelo Asioma pedals. And I've had these over 3 years. I think May was 3 years or May was 4 years, something like that. And you know, I do about 10,000 miles a year, but I do 1 million feet of climbing. These things have been infallible. They've been excellent pedals. And I only have one set because I could just move them around from bike to bike, and it's never a problem. So I think that's all for this. By the way, I love this seat tube, top tube, and chain and seat stay junction here. It's just nice, reinforced, and it gives a really nice clamping point for your seat post, so you're not pinching it, and it's just a really smart design. And then their head tube on a steel bike has drop-in bearings, which is also just a really cool thing. And it's an inch and an eighth steer tube, but it's just really thin and very sleek looking. And oh, by the way, that is one of the things I love about steel bikes. It's just nice, thin tubes. You don't have to have, sorry, you don't have to have these ridiculously fat carbon tubes. I think those bikes look hideous. And if it's a time trial bike, even worse. I just think they look ridiculous. But that's just my opinion. And that's why I love the slick and sexiness of a steel bike with the small tubes. And you just don't need that much material. These frames are more than stiff enough. I challenge people to say, oh, that's flexy. I don't know. I sprint every day on this bike, and I don't ever have a problem keeping up with people, except, of course, when they're better than me. But it has nothing to do with the bike. Okay, I think that's all for today. I don't weigh bikes on this channel because that's just stupid. That does not say anything about the performance of a bike. So please, when you walk up to someone's bike, don't pick it up and say, oh, how much does it weigh? Because that's completely irrelevant. It's not important. What is important is how it rides. What is important is, in this case, the ease of maintenance on this bike. It's ridiculously easy to work on with all the external cables and stuff. So anyway, that's all for today. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you up the road.